Hi, my name is Dale Maley. Today in this video, we're going to explain how to draw a 1909 lampshade that has compound angles in SketchUp. Now, I found this old lamp in our family house back in 2012, and that house had 5 generations of our family that lived in it. And I decided to make a modern replica of that old lamp back in 2012. I started to do some research on that old lamp, and it's a long story, but eventually someone pointed me back and said, that looks exactly like the lamp that was in the 1909 Popular Mechanics book about Mission Furniture. And I actually had that copy of that book, and I had made several projects in there, but I had never noticed that lamp. But yes, indeed, whoever made the old lamp exactly followed the pattern that was in the old 1909 book. Now, here's a copy of the page from that 1909 book showing the completed lamp on the left, and you can compare that to the old lamp that we found in the family attic on the right. Except for the frilly things hanging down on the left, the one on the right is an exact copy. And as we'll see, they don't give dimensions for making the shade, but they do give dimensions for the center post and the 4 legs. And our old lamp exactly matches those dimensions. Now, here's a copy of another page from the same book, and I'm going to read this key part here. To make a shade such as shown in the illustration is rather difficult. The shade is made of wood glued up and has art glass fitted in rabbets cut on the inner edges. Such shades can be purchased ready to attach. So basically they're saying the shade's too hard to make, just go down to your local hardware store and buy one. That may have been true back in 1909, but sure is not true in 2022. Now, on the right is a photograph of the replica lamp that I made in 2022. And I can still remember the biggest challenge was making that lampshade was all the angles that were involved. Now, here's some photographs. On the left is the original lamp that we found up in the attic of our house. And then on the right is a duplicate that I made back in 2012. And you can see, except for the brass strips on the top, which have aged on the left, my new lamp on the right is an identical clone of the first one. Now, I remember from 10 years ago, it was quite a challenge to draw that lampshade in SketchUp. I got it done, but I had to use an angle calculator, compound angle calculator program that John McGaw developed. And I actually downloaded this little program to my computer, and then it would run on my desktop. However, when I went in 10 years later, now his website has completely disappeared, and the program that I downloaded, I must have changed computers because my new computer running Windows 10 will not run his old program. Now, here's a screenshot of the John McGaw program that I used back in 2012. And as you can see, you can put in the number of sides. Then the slope is the angle of the walls. And then it outputs the radial arm angle, the miter gauge, and the blade tilt angle. In late 2022, I decided I'd like to build another lamp. That first one I built 10 years ago immediately went to my sister. She really liked it and uses it all the time. So I decided to make at least one more, maybe some more, in late 2022. But I'm going to document the design process better. And I found a new online calculator to use for the project. Now, here's a screenshot of the new compound angle calculator that I found in 2022. It's at jansen.us, and you can see the rest of the address down below. And like the old program, you input the number of sides and the side angle, and then it calculates your key saw settings. Now we have to determine the key inputs that we want to use for the online compound angle calculator as well as in SketchUp. So for my example project here, the shade design inputs, we wanted 11 3/4 inches long at the bottom of the shade, We like the height to be about 7 7/8. The each side wall is 3/8 of an inch thick. We'll talk about the tilt angle from the vertical in a second. And then we'd like from SketchUp as an output, we'd like that top part of the shade to be about 3 3/4 of an inch long. Since I still have the old original lamp, I found it, took off the shade, then I got out my digital angle finder, and I set the shade on a flat surface. I zeroed the gauge out at 0 degrees as shown on the right, and then I started tipping the digital angle finder until it matched the side angle, and in this case it came in at 57 degrees. Now that's from the horizontal, so the program wants it from the vertical. So you take 90 degrees and subtract your 57 measurement, and you end up with a tilt angle of 33 degrees. So now we're ready to make the key inputs into the online compound angle calculator. So in our case we have 4 sides, so we enter 4. Then our side angle from the vertical was 33 degrees. The program then outputs a couple of key sawing dimensions. The miter angle on your saw is 28.6 degrees, and then we're using a miter joint, not a butted joint, so our blade tilt then has to be 36.4 degrees. Now I know that there are several ways you can draw that lampshade in SketchUp, but I'm going to use a method that's for a woodworker there's actually going to make it. It should be very obvious how to do the saw settings. So in SketchUp we're going to start out with a rectangular board, 11 3/4 long by 7 7/8 high. The blue blade on the right, you could think of that as a handsaw, or you could even think of that as a circular blade on a miter saw. And then I drew like a little handle on the right hand side in blue, that little cylinder. Well, actually, that's very handy because in the first step, when we do the miter angle, that's pretty straightforward, as we'll see. But then once you've got it at the miter angle, and then you want to tilt the blade, you need to be able to tilt the blade on the right axis. And we can use that little face on this end of that handle to do the proper rotation, as we'll see in a minute. The next thing we need to do is rotate the blade on, let's say, a miter saw, 28.6 degrees. So you can see here where we've rotated the blade 28.6 degrees. Now we need to tilt the blade 36.4 degrees, and it's important to get the right axis to tilt your blade. So as I mentioned before, if you use the end of that cylinder where it says rotate from end of cylinder, if you use that to do the rotation, that's correct. If you just try one of the regular axes and rotate around either the X, Y, or Z axes, your blade will no longer be kind of parallel to the board. It'll be going off at an angle. So this is a convenient way to do the tilt on your blade. Now you simply intersect the blade, the blue blade, with the board. And after you intersect it, you can erase the blade. Then you explode what's left. Then go in and remove basically you're removing the sawn material, and then make it a group again. So at this stage our right side's done. We're ready to do the left side now. And I'm not going to show all those steps, but it's the same basic process to go on the left side that we just used on the right side. After sawing off the left side in SketchUp, here's the one side that we're left. The bottom's 11 3/4. Measuring up the corner there up the side, it's 9 inches. The height is 7 7/8, and the top length is 3 3/16. Now that we have the first piece completed, we can tilt that at 33 degrees from vertical, and then we make 3 copies of that to end up with 4 sides on the shade. Put the 4 sides together and it fits perfectly. Now for this lampshade, technically the top of the four sides, that should be horizontal, not at angles. So it's relatively easy to go into SketchUp and change the top of the sides so they're horizontal. And when you do this, you'll change your top length just a little bit. In this case, it changed it to 3 7/16. So, in summary, this video explains how to draw the compound angles required to make a 1909 lampshade. Hopefully this video will help you on any of your compound angle projects that you have. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe. Thank you.